Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. If I haven't been round and said hello to everybody yet, I will try my best to just enjoy it for the rest of the evening, won't you? And there's some people who aren't here, so to have some friends.
Dad really was one of a kind. He was such a loving and kind person. You know, he always had so much time for everybody, no matter who you were or what it was regarding. He would give you his time as if it would cost nothing. He was such a fun person, always telling jokes, making people laugh, being the practical joker, playing tricks on you, and you know, he was always having fun. I never really knew how troubled he was. He was always smiley, happy, or so he seemed. You know, he put on very good front, he hid it so well.
I'm Adrian Titley, a normal 22-year-old from South Wales, but there's one certain statistic that connects me with thousands of families in the UK. In July 2015, my dad, Paul, took his own life. In the UK, 84 men take their own lives every single week. That's 12 men a day, 2 men every hour, and 84 families left behind. My dad was my best friend, so my world as I knew it inevitably came crashing down the day he took his last breath. And like many others bereaved by suicide, I've been left with only one question: why? So now I'm going on my own journey to document exactly what happens to a family after they lose a loved one to suicide. How do you carry on knowing someone you loved so dearly hid their pain so well? Moving forward after a bereavement by suicide is a story of guilt, grief, and great strength, and I want to find families just like mine to hear their stories of life after suicide. I moved to university in Worcester just 8 weeks after losing my dad. I don't get to talk about him much while I'm at uni, so I've come back to Wales to talk with my sister, Georgina, about the day we lost him and what her recollection of the day sounds like.
So I was off work from having a knee operation, and I was in bed asleep, and I remember Dad came in like he did every day to say goodbye before he went to work, and he actually came in and gave me a proper hug, which isn't something that he would usually do, and then he went off to what I thought was to work. It must have been a couple of hours later because I'd fallen back to sleep. I woke up because my phone was ringing, and I looked at the screen and I thought, well, it's Dad's boss, that's a bit odd. So when I answered the phone, he said, "George, is everything all right with your dad?" He said he's not come into work today, and we've just had an odd out of office email saying, "I'm sorry to tell you that I'm no longer around, and thank you all for your friendship." And so I said straight away, I said, "Oh my God, Terry is he's gonna do something. We need to find him." So Terry said, "Give me your mum's mobile number. I'll contact your mum and I'll head back from West Wales now. I'll meet you at your house. I'll be as quick as I can." Dad's boss had actually called the police for us because I hadn't thought to do that. So they turned up and they came in to talk to me and AD. They wanted to get a statement. They wanted a description, to see photographs. We were sat with them for what felt like absolutely ages. In that time, my mum had actually arrived home as well, so the three of us were in the living room talking to the police, giving our statement, and then they said, "Well, you know, there's not a lot more I can do here now, so we're going to go and join our colleagues out on the search for your dad. You need to stay here in case he comes back or in case he phones." So we stayed at the house. It hadn't been that long, but it felt like ages, and I saw the police coming back after about an hour and a half. They were walking down the driveway, hats off, and looking back now, I know why it was, but at the time I thought, they found him, where is he? So I ran out the front door and I said, have you found him? They said, look, can you come inside? We need to talk to you and your mum together. I said, no, just tell me where he is. And they said, no, come on, come inside. So we came inside, and we didn't make it into the living room before they had told us that they'd found a body matching the description of Dad down at the hotel in Mega Services. I don't really think it sunk in for me straight away. I remember hearing my mum crying. No, AD was crying. My mum was shouting, no, that can't be right. I sort of collapsed on the floor crying, and then I got up, grabbed my car keys and ran to my car before anybody could even ask where I was going. I remember racing down to the services within minutes. I stopped right outside the hotel. There was police on the doors. I got inside, and I ran up and down the corridors of every floor until I found a room that Dad was in, and I listened. I put my ear up to the door and listened, and I could hear a police radio inside. So I knew that it was the door. I knew that was the room where he was. So I banged on the door, and when the police officer opened the door, I tried to get inside. He sort of held me by my shoulders and stopped me from getting in the room, which I'm incredibly thankful for now. He took me away to a different room and sat me down. I said, just let me see him. I need to go and see him and tell him that everything's okay. We can sort it out, and I need to take him home. And they were like, no, we can't let you see him. We can't let you see him right now. So any loss is heartbreaking, but I think with a suicide, you're left with so many questions why, so many what ifs, so much guilt and so much anger. I think since then I've really reevaluated my life. Things that were important to me before are no longer important to me. The things that I perhaps should have given more time to before are now my priority. It's really made me think long and hard about everything in my life, and it's given me a new appreciation for things. However, the way it's affected me, I don't think I will ever recover from. I feel broken, and I don't think I will ever get rid of that feeling. I mean, there's been no support, not for me, not for my mum, not for the girls, my sisters. We had no support after we were told on that day. We were put on the list for bereavement counselling, and my mum got a letter through 20 months after we lost my dad. I mean, 20 months? You need that help in the matter of days afterwards, not that long. And then my appointment was sent through 17 months after, by which time I decided, I'm still here. I've got through those really terrible initial first days. I don't want to go back and relive it, so I didn't choose to have the counselling, but I did take up counselling appointments that I was offered through the NHS. So there's a huge lack of support there. I know the girls have had nothing. They've heavily relied on friends and family. As same for my mum, and it's not good enough because people need help.
On the 26th of March 2018, my sisters and I were invited to appear on ITV's This Morning, a daytime TV programme here in the UK, to help launch a campaign spearheaded by the mental health charity CALM, which stands for the Campaign Against Living Miserably, a charity dedicated to preventing male suicide. This was the launch of Project 84, where 84 lifelike sculptures of men were placed atop the roof of the ITV tower to represent the number of men who take their own lives in the UK every single week. 12 of those were placed on top of the This Morning studio on London's South Bank, one of which represented our dad. Since then, Project 84 has been talked about all around the world, and I've received messages from men all over the country who have told me the story my sisters and I told of our loss on national TV helped them get through another day.
Now, following the launch of our Project 84 campaign to highlight the issue of men's mental health and suicide prevention all this week, we're joined by three people who know firsthand the effects of losing someone to this silent killer.
Sisters Georgina, Shannon and Adrienne sadly lost their father in 2015 after he unexpectedly took his own life. And they join us now, and thank you for coming in today. You've been down, you've had a look,
yes.
and you've seen Dad, who's up there on the roof. You designed that, didn't you? You had a lot of input into what he looked like.
Yeah.
It's very realistic. Were there any signs, looking back?
Not at all. I think the only signs you notice are once they're gone, because you then re-look at everything that they did leading up to, their death. So looking back on it now, we probably could see the signs, but obviously it's too late to actually do anything about it.
Since then, my sisters and I have been aching to have more involvement with CALM, and so today we're heading to London to help host a parliamentary drop-in session at Portcullis House to try and encourage MPs to pledge to act on suicide prevention and bereavement support in the UK. At the time of filming, over 240,000 members of the British public have signed a petition calling for ministerial responsibility for suicide prevention and bereavement support in the UK. When someone takes their own life, the emotional pain is inconceivable, but people never really think of the impact just one suicide has on society. Every single suicide has a societal cost estimated at an incredible £1.6 million. So it seems pretty ridiculous that no government minister has yet been assigned a position to hold public responsibility for suicide prevention and bereavement support. Too many families are left without support in the aftermath of a suicide, left with no hope and no idea of how to move forward after such a traumatic event. Now I'm on my way to Cardiff to meet a woman who has experienced just that. Rhiann Burke is the founder and chief executive of To Wish Upon a Star, a parental bereavement charity set up in memory of her late son George and husband Paul, who took his own life just 5 days after the couple tragically lost baby George to pneumonia in 2012, just 1 week after his first birthday. I want to know how Paul's suicide impacted her life and how she found the strength to move forward.
He blamed himself for his son's death. He blamed himself for not being a good daddy, and that's in his own words. He felt he'd failed me, he'd failed our other children, and he actually used the words that he killed George, which I knew he hadn't. But I truly blame the fact that nobody came to look after us, nobody offered us any support, nobody sat us down and said that actually guilt is extremely common and you are going to feel guilty. And that's why he took his own life. He took his own life on the Monday. We waited hours before the police even came to tell us that he'd taken his own life. I knew he was dead, but they couldn't tell me how. And then the following few days we had family liaison officers with us who were lovely, really lovely people, but actually put their hands up and said they'd had no type of training in this situation. They had to Google for find support. GP who came out had to Google to find support for us. And we tried ringing round and we got nothing at all. And myself and my children were abandoned. And the effect that that's had on me long term is huge. You know, I feel worthless. I feel like no one cares about me, which stems from that whole situation where our child died and Paul and I were just abandoned by the system. And sadly, I'd hoped that we were a mistake, that maybe we'd been missed, and because George died in the middle of the night, maybe it was because they just didn't ring people. But when I started sharing my story, it was a good year afterwards I opened up, people poured in and said to me, that happened to me. And it's happening all the time, which is why To Wish Upon a Star has become such a big organisation so quick, was because we identified a gap that was so visibly there that no one had ever filled. What I try and explain to people, how I can explain it, is when you lose someone, I think the crying and the missing them is the easy part. I didn't recognise myself in the mirror for years. I didn't even know who I was. I couldn't think straight. I'd forget everything. I used to remember everything. And for me, I feel it stripped me of the person I was. And I suppose that's the only time I ever really get angry with Paul, was that he seems to have taken my innocence away a little bit. I have suffered with PTSD for the last 6 years. My anxiety is just some days out of control. At least once or twice a week I don't want to get out of bed in the mornings. You know, and once I'm up I'm fine. It's just a lot of it's I don't want to face the day because something bad might happen. So yeah, it's been a horrendous 6 years in a lot of ways, but it's also been a really positive 6 years, not just through To Wish, but my relationship with my children has improved. I'm the mummy I wanted to be. Life is good, you know, and you do meet some incredible people.
If there's one thing we should take from all of this, it's that mental illness has no race, no religion, no gender, no sexuality, no status. It affects people of all ages, of all shapes and sizes, and of all nationalities and ethnicities. I look forward to seeing a day where we see a decline in suicide rates among men, and where people can talk openly about their mental health without fear of judgment or an attached stigma. A day when people get the professional help they so only deserve. A day when seeking help is seen as a strength. A day when mental illness is seen as normal. I live to see that day, and I won't stop fighting the stigma until that day arrives.